Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening. We've got a lot to get to today as it's time for SMU's 2023 season to kick off. Finally, 11 a.m. Saturday inside Ford Stadium against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Jumping right in, joining me now on the Pony Express podcast, Ben Carlisle covers the Bulldogs for BleedTechBlue.com. Ben, we've chatted already a couple times this week. Thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely, Billy. Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to a fun matchup Saturday afternoon over in Dallas between Louisiana Tech and SMU.
Louisiana Tech is one of those few schools that has already played a game beating FIU on Saturday. What were your takeaways from that game as you walked away from your first look at the 2023 Bulldogs?
Yeah, this is a program, Louisiana Tech going back to the Skip Holtz era, went to a bowl game every year from 2014 through 2020. You look at Tech's, the era that Tech has been in Division I, it was probably as bright as it's been, but last couple of years, you go 3-9 in 2021. Skip Holtz is obviously removed from his post. Sonny Cumbie enters as the new head coach last year. They go 3-9 in year one. And so I think a lot of fans were excited, to get the season underway. Hank Bachmeier stole a lot of the offseason storylines being brought in from Boise State. And so I got a chance to see the team Saturday night in week 0 against FIU, obviously a conference game starting out. And it was a slow start. FIU jumped out to a 14-0 start. I think they had 109 yards of total offense in that first quarter. And then the remainder of the game, I think that really the story of the game was defensively over the final 3 quarters, 33 plays. They only allow 73 total yards. I think FIU only had 4 passing yards for the entirety of the game. And Coach Cumbie talked a little bit earlier this week about how that's probably an anomaly. You know that you've improved defensively, but you're never really going to hold an opponent to 4 yards passing. But they were happy with the performance defensively. Hank Bachmeier got out of the gates a little bit slow, and it was his 30th career start, but he hadn't played a football game since back in October for Boise State a season ago. He starts 2 of 6, had an early interception, and then from that point on, he was 34 of his last 44 32 of his last 38, finishes 34 of 44, 333 yards, had a touchdown, had an interception. And like I mentioned to you a little bit off the air earlier, Tech moved the football really well between the 30s. They struggled to score points. They missed a couple of field goals. They had some turnovers in plus territory. So I think when you look ahead to this week against SMU, they're looking to kind of get things clicking at a more efficient rate offensively. But all in all, it was the first game of the year. You wonder, some of it has to do with the opponent. Obviously, FIU is not very good, so you kind of question that a little bit, even following a win. But they hope that they can continue building on this win. And I know it did a lot for that locker room to win in the manner that they did.
Smoke Harris really stole the show watching it back for me. 11 targets, 11 receptions, 155 yards and a touchdown. He also is a return guy back there for Louisiana Tech. Did you see this continued development from him coming? Is this exactly kind of what the doctor ordered from Louisiana Tech's side in terms of involving him?
Yeah, I think it is what the doctor ordered. He's been a player throughout his career. He's a smaller receiver, 5'6", 180, 185 pounds. He's always had that ability to make guys miss in space, but he's never really fully taken off. And you look at that game against FIU, 11 catches, 155 yards and a touchdown. He had the one big one that went for 64 yards. I thought it was the best performance of his Tech career by far. And from Tech's perspective, they're hoping that they – I don't know if you're going to get 11 for 155 every week, but they're hoping that he can continue to take steps forward and become a legitimate number one threat at receiver, especially early in the year as they look to try to identify, outside of him, who are going to be the playmakers at the wide receiver position.
I covered Jarvis Thornton when he was in high school coming out of Southern Lab. What did you see from him as the leading rusher? And is this a running back by committee type of approach for them?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So Marquise Crosby, the starting running back, was out for this when Tyree Shelton, a transfer from Miami of Ohio, was slated to be his backup. He got hurt late in fall camp, so he missed this game as well. Jarvis Thornton, a kid that started his career as a defensive back, moved over to running back last year, had a pretty solid year, near 500 yards. He got his first career start, played well, had 8 carries, 51 yards. He went down late in the first quarter, so they were to their 4th, 5th, 6th running back late. Jacob Fields has the late touchdown run to kind of cap it off. So Tech's really thin at the running back position. It sounds like Tyree Shelton has a decent chance. It's going to be more of a game time decision. It's back at the end of the day. A lot of this game is going to hang Bachmeier's right on.
And you kind of broke up there, so can you give us the status of the 2 starters again in terms of what to expect from them this week?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Marquise Crosby's going to play. I've seen reports that he's a game-time decision, but he hasn't practiced at all, so I would be surprised if he suited up. Said Tyree got to practice yesterday. I know they're anticipating him on practicing again today. So we'll see where he's at. But obviously, you would like to have Shelton back there, just knowing that Jarvis Thornton's a 50-50 guy when it comes to playing this week. But, if either one of those guys, Shelton or Thornton's unable to go, it's going to be some true freshmen. When you talk about Jacob Fields, Keith Willis is a kid out of Houston that's had a strong fall camp. I know they're excited about. But, some of those young guys, and you've seen it, I'm sure, throughout your career, they kind of tippy-toe around a little bit, don't necessarily hit holes like they're normally accustomed to is things out. So it's going to be running back by committee in all likelihood for the Bulldogs on Saturday.
Hank Bachmeier, gets over that slow start and the interception. Was he everything kind of from there that Bulldogs fans expected bringing him in from Boise State?
I thought it was. When Tech first came out of the tunnel, I'll tell this quick little story. To see him come out as a team captain, you got to go back to 2016 since Tech's had a quarterback as a team captain. And they've had some good teams during those years. They've had some down teams during those years. But to see that was a breath of fresh air. And I think his leadership really shined throughout the evening. And, you go 34, 44, 333 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The numbers are obviously sufficient to what you wanted to see. But I think there's another level in there for him as well as he continues to get more comfortable in an air raid scheme or a scheme that has a lot of air raid concepts in it as he tries to adjust from playing in a more pro-style system at Boise State. But I think the big thing for Tech is, outside of Smoke Harris, can Cyrus Allen, another kid from New Orleans, can he continue to emerge as a legitimate guy on the outside? Because FIU, they stayed in cover 2 all night. They kind of shadowed him a little bit, and they wanted to force Bachmeier to take some checkdowns and see if Tech could put together 12 to 14 play drives. And like I mentioned, they struggled to put points on the board when they got into plus territory.
You look at this defense, Miles Hurd, Cecile Singleton, the 2 leaders back there in the secondary. But talking with SMU this week, they're very much, concerned about that secondary. They've got some dogs, no pun intended, back there. Give us a feel for that secondary of what Preston Stone is going to be facing this week.
Yeah, I think the secondary is probably the strength of the defense. And you and I talked last night on BleedTechBlue Radio. Much like SMU, it's an entirely revamped defense. It's a lot of transfers, defensive line, transfer starters at linebacker. Hurd's a transfer from SFA, where Tech defensive coordinator Scott Power was at previously. So he's comfortable within the system. Cecil Singleton had the late game-winning interception. Willie Roberts had a big play early in that game with the pass breakup, and he had 4 interceptions a season ago, so they feel really good about him at a cornerback spot. Cedric Woods is a kid at a Carroll High School over in Monroe. I believe he made his 24th career start this past Saturday, so they got a lot of experience on that back end, and they're going to have to trust those guys against a good SMU offense that really likes to attack teams down the field. And they're going to, Scott Power, the defensive coordinator, he's going to rely on them to hold up in man coverage as well, because he likes to bring a lot of pressure.
Brevin Randall up front seems to be leading the way in that front seven. What do you see from him, and who are the other guys that are in that mix up front?
Yeah. You talk about the linebackers. Brevin Randall's a kid, another SFA transfer, much like Miles Hurd, much like Willie Roberts. The two kids on the back end in the secondary. I believe he had 9 tackles in the opener. He was the Southland Conference Defensive Player of the Year back in 2020. That's probably the biggest change for this defense from a season ago. They've just gotten faster, more athletic at the linebacker spot, and he'll start next to Jeslord Boateng, a transfer from Akron, who played really good in week 1. And it'll be a 4-2-5 scheme, similar to what SMU likes to do by playing a true nickel as that fifth defensive back. And I think, coming into the year, you talk about the defensive line. Deshaun Hall's a kid that's been in the program forever. He played good in week 0, had a sack, had a big tackle for loss late in the game. But they got to be able to put some pressure on the quarterback and force quarterbacks to get off their spot. I know that'll be one of their key goals for this week, going against a guy like Preston Stone. While he is extremely talented, he does lack a little bit in experience.
Do you sense that the old adage of getting that much better from week 1 to week 2, or in this case, week 0 to week 1, is something that you can see where the holes are and they look a little fixable from week to week, or are there some things that make you pause in terms of, okay, this might be a season-long process of working through some obstacles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think they're hoping to take that step forward, week 0 to week 1, game 1 to game 2, obviously. I think at the same time, we'd be lying if we didn't say they're taking a huge step up in competition as well. I mean, there's no doubt that SMU has more talent on the field than what FIU did a week ago. And so I think that'll be a really good challenge for Louisiana Tech. And I think the most important thing for them is they want to continue to see this offense progress under Hank Bachmeier. They want to be able to get some of those running backs back at some point, whether it's this week or later in the year. And then on the defensive side of the ball, like I said, there's so many new faces. They're extremely pleased with how they played against FIU, but they know how big of a challenge this is going to be this week with the Mustangs over in Dallas.
You're going to answer some questions for our ontheponyexpress.com subscribers, but one of them is, how do you see this one playing out? And a score prediction for us?
Yeah, I said last night, I think it'll be a high-scoring affair. I think the big thing for me, and, you hate to talk too much about the weather, but that's kind of the area of the country that we live in. It's going to be a hot Saturday afternoon. I would imagine both teams are really going to be tested from a depth standpoint. I said last night, I think 42-31. I kind of go back to that 2021 game, and I know there's a lot of new faces for both teams, but SMU was a 12, 13-point favorite on the road in Ruston, and that was an extremely good college football game. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I think if Tech's going to be, in the game, have a chance to possibly win in the fourth quarter, there's no doubt they're going to have to get off to a quick start, maybe while SMU is trying to
All right, well, Ben, you cover Louisiana Tech as good as anyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the game Saturday in Dallas. Looking forward to these two teams getting together, teams that really aren't too far away from each other. So hoping we have as good of a game as we did back in that Hail Mary game, but should be a fun, hot one in Dallas.
No doubt. Thanks, Billy. I appreciate it. It's been good speaking with you throughout the week, and looking forward to a fun one on Saturday afternoon.
Thanks a lot, Ben. There he is, Ben Carlisle, joining us on the Pony Express podcast. Look, sorry for some of the driving deficiencies there when you're driving around. Sometimes the cell phone reception isn't great, but you got a good feel for how this Louisiana Tech team looks coming off of that week 0 game against FIU. They had to come from behind. They took the lead with 61 seconds left and were able to finish the job and get a win in week 0 for Sonny Cumbie and his crew. When it comes to SMU, Rhett Lashley did meet with the media on Wednesday, and the big piece of news I would say from that press conference was the status of SMU running back Kamar Wheaton. Kamar Wheaton is going to be suspended for the first game against SMU, and I'm a little surprised by the suspension, but Rhett Lashley did say it's a 1-game suspension. He missed some class in the second summer session, and they are holding him accountable. And look, if you look back on Kamar Wheaton's history at SMU, he missed some time in the spring to get academics taken care of. But this is a running back room that has, without a doubt, I think, passed up Kamar Wheaton. You've got Jalen Knight and you've got LJ Johnson, the two transfers that are expected to take a good portion of the carries. And then you have Tyler Levine coming back. And then you have Velton Gardner that just put his head down and went to work this offseason. He trimmed down, looked more explosive in fall camp. And so for SMU, I think Kamar Wheaton is still going to be something where they have to continue to just try and keep him moving along in the right direction. Because if you look back on his summer, and I saw him at the beginning, he was, obviously working out with the team, but you couldn't really tell how much work he was putting in just because it is shorts, t-shirts, and a weight room. But he added some weight. He added some explosiveness. He worked like he was motivated to get on the field in 2023, knowing that it would be a long road. Now, this week, he was doing some scout team work against SMU's defense. That's because he isn't going to play this week, so there's no reason to prep him, quite honestly. But for Kamar Wheaton, it's going to continue to be kind of about keeping that carrot in front of him, because he's a guy that honestly just has not had great support overall in terms of putting him in the best position to succeed early in life. And now SMU's continue to help him and work through that. And I don't think, at least in my opinion, he is on the wrong track. I think he is serving a suspension that was a obvious hiccup from the summer. Rhett Lashley didn't mention anything in terms of, he hasn't been going to class so far this semester. So obviously with Kamar Wheaton, you're going to have to, see it to believe it before he really breaks out and becomes reliable for SMU. But, Rhett Lashley holding his players accountable with that piece of news. So SMU will be with just 4 scholarship running backs against Louisiana Tech. They also have former walk-on Zane Miners, who is going to play some special teams, going to do some things for SMU. He's been with the program a while now. So that was the biggest piece of news coming out of Rhett Lashley's press conference. For SMU, when I look at this game, and I see SMU winning 45-20, that's my game prediction for you guys there. To get there, though, SMU has to come out sharp. And here's why. I think a team like Louisiana Tech will have to really hang around to be motivated in this one. If you catch my drift, if SMU can jump all over them early and not let them off the mat, that is the recipe for success. But when you look at a team like Louisiana Tech, who already has a game under its belt, they know what all the little kinks that maybe they had to work out from a game just management side of things, from getting on and off the field, all those things. They've already been in that environment already once in a very competitive game too. And it was a game that, for much of it, Louisiana Tech, 1, looked like they were going to lose. 2, they did not look that great. So for them, they're going to be motivated to bounce back, going on the road, trying to pick up a win against a team that is heavily favored. I've seen the line at 20 in some places when I've looked, and at least at the time of this recording. But for SMU, you've got to find a way to jump all over them, because I think if you can jump out to a 14-0, 17-0 type lead, 17-3, that was where FIU is kind of headed. But FIU is a bad football team. They're going to be one of the worst teams in college football in all likelihood this fall. So they didn't have the ability to stay consistent and keep that going in the right direction to win the game. For SMU, they have the talent, they have the depth to make that happen. And so for SMU, the key to the game this week is jumping out to a big start and playing clean. What SMU can't do is they can't turn the ball over. They can't give Louisiana Tech hope. I know this is a week-to-week thing. You could apply this to anything. But when you're a team going into your first game and another team has one already on the books, that's important. Again, this is an SMU team with a lot of new faces. And look, the culture looks great. The chemistry looks great. The offseason, the fall camp, all those things. But they haven't been through a game together yet. And one piece that I think I'm most excited about seeing this weekend in Ford Stadium is this defense. It's a defense that has completely changed the way it looks from a physical standpoint. and they have added a lot of depth and talent. That depth and talent has to come together, though, and play well. And going against a guy like Hank Bachmeier, who's seen it all, like Rhett Lashley said this week, if you watched it on our YouTube channel, he's gone into Florida State and gotten a win already back when he was at Boise State. There's not going to be really an environment that phases him. So when you have a guy, and we've seen this from time to time over the course of SMU's recent history, especially if an opposing team has a quarterback that can kind of make things go. In the past, it's kind of been, oh boy, all right, here we go. This is going to be a dogfight. Where this SMU team has to establish itself is, one, defensively being able to show the strides they've made. They got to get Smoke Harris on the ground. They can't give up extra yards, all of those things that they've been talking a lot about this offseason. Now they got to put it together and make it happen. And so I think in terms of my excitement level, I want to see the defense, because there's going to be so much to digest from that group. Rhett Lashley's offense, we know what it's going to look like. We know who the guys that they're going to rotate in. We know who the group is, but we got to see it all, of course, work together and see what the rotations are actually like. There's going to be a lot to digest on both sides, but in terms of the defense, there's going to be a lot more to take away. And when you go against a quarterback who has had success like Hank Bachmeier, that's where SMU has a chance to kind of make an early statement and show maybe how this is going to go, because next week when they go to Norman, they're going to have to contend with a team that has Jeff Levy, one of the best offensive coordinators in the country, in my opinion, at least, pushing the buttons behind that Oklahoma attack. They're going to have to be ready for that against a more talented Oklahoma team than Louisiana Tech, by all means. Against Louisiana Tech, this defense, I would just like to see fundamental football and show that what they've been working on since the spring in the offseason, addressing needs, bringing in new players, that will all fit together. So for this one, guys, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. We don't have too much to really digest on SMU side. They're fairly healthy. Jaden Jones is a guy that, is cleared on the edge to play. Cam Irvin is a game time decision, Rhett Lashley said, but probably not going to play. And Stephon Wright has been nicked up as well late in fall camp and into the semester. So overall, SMU is pretty healthy right now. So that's a good thing for the Mustangs. We're going to have to see how it all plays out. On the field at 11 a.m. against Louisiana Tech, the 2023 SMU season gets going. So, going to keep this one relatively short and sweet, but hope you guys enjoy the game. SMU Louisiana Tech, 11 a.m. Be sure to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. Just $1 for a month to join. You also can get 50% off your annual subscription by joining. Support our sponsors on the podcast. All those are in the description in the YouTube link. And catch the game, 11 a.m. on ESPNU. We'll be watching. We'll have our live post-game show from Shug's Bagels right there in Mockingbird Plaza. So feel free to stop by, say hello, submit a question, do all those things. It's finally here. It's been a long off season, but I hope you guys enjoyed this preview edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. SMU Louisiana Tech, 11 a.m. Saturday. We'll catch you there. Thanks for listening.